Ladies and gentlemen, people of the internet, welcome back to yet another episode of Crypto Over Coffee. I hope you're doing well on this fine Friday. And if you're new here, every single Friday I break down the latest news and the hottest topics in the world of technology and cryptocurrency whilst drinking a cup of delicious coffee. Now in today's episode, we are talking about Algorand, Cardano stake pools, Bitcoin price, Brave browser, a bunch of cool stuff, and of course, our usual 404 Logic Not Found segment. But before we get into all of that, let's kick it off as we always do with questions from the community, from YouTube and Twitter. And if you want one of your questions answered, please do leave them in the comments down below or tweet me at Hashoshi4. And if you would be so inclined, please do subscribe to the channel down below and hit the bell notification button so you get a heads up whenever I post new stuff here on the channel. So let's get into the questions. Now the first question is from Walter L. It says, liked and subscribed, thank you very much. What are your thoughts on passive Ethereum earnings on the Ethereum Gold smart contract? So I would say, and you did mention in this question, there are scam versions out there, and it's really, really easy to get tricked whenever you have these sort of deposit-heavy contracts where you're depositing and you're getting out some sort of value, especially when it's sort of like mimicked staking where you lock up Ether and then you get rewards out of it. So I did do a quick search on the Ethereum Gold smart contract 2 days ago, actually. And yes, I think it's a viable way to earn, but I also would urge extreme caution with all of these types of things, including with this whole, the yams, the vegetables, the emojis, and all of like the DeFi products that claim you can earn a ton. You can, but there is significant risk involved in doing so. Staking, for sure, you can earn, but just definitely keep your wits about you and don't overextend in these sorts of things. It's definitely good to see that admin controls have been removed so the contract can't get killed or coming through and taking the funds from the back door. So definitely, Walter, you're right, but definitely exercise caution. Second question of the day is from Agent Boyette. Good day, sir. I'm from the Philippines. Do you know some apps that pay in free crypto? I'm an Android phone user. Thanks. And by the way, I've been watching all your videos about crypto. More power. Thank you very much. Fun fact, actually, a lot of my family, like a quarter of my family is from the Philippines. And so, yeah, thing you didn't know about Hashoshi. And in terms of apps that pay free crypto in the Philippines, let's talk about that. So in terms of getting free crypto, I don't really think there are any apps out there yet, but there are ways that you can probably utilize crypto to earn crypto in this case. And so maybe not even on your Android phone, but on your computer, you can go and you can use UniSwap. You can make some money doing trading that way. You can also go on the crypto.com app, which I think is viable in the Philippines now. And there probably will be their crypto earn functionality if there isn't already on the crypto.com app in the Philippines. But I think things are starting to move in the right direction in terms of exchanges being able to operate in the Philippines. And then beyond that, there should be more features coming from there. So I would stay tuned. I'm sorry I don't have very many specific things to point you to, but I think things are moving in the right direction. So thank you very much for your question. Another question here is from Sohail Musavi. How you doing? Doing well. Thank you very much. Hope you're doing well. It would be nice to give a quick recommendation on what stablecoins are best when it comes to exchanging them for taking profits on wallets during parabolic pumps. Thank you very much for your question, Sohail. So I think the best stablecoins of the day are usually the ones that you have access to. Every exchange usually has different stablecoins that they use. I think USDC is one of the common ones, but you can also use things like DAI. DAI is starting to become more prevalent on different exchanges. If your main fiat off-ramp is Coinbase, for example, then DAI is acceptable there. You can do a bunch of things with that. So for me, I usually use either DAI or USDC, and then from there, I can move things basically wherever possible, wherever I need to, because most exchanges support one of those two different stablecoins. But you can also move to a wide variety depending on where you are in the world. There are different stablecoins that are more prevalent here in the US. Those are the two that I use personally, but to each their own. So hopefully that answers your question, and thank you very much for your question. Dr. Gumbercules asks, as a Solidity dev, have you heard of DFO Hub under, I guess, the tag build? The founders are two ETH developers that are working on a base layer for writing smart contracts that would make bug fixes completely possible on chain. No need to scrap and write a new one. After you posted this comment, I actually did a quick search on it, and I think this is really cool. They're almost using like a proxy contract structure where you can make some hot swaps to contract logic. I like how they're formalizing this and making it more abstract and easy for developers to use, because there are patterns out there that help you make updatable or upgradable contracts, but it also introduces more attack vectors, potentially things that can go wrong. It's also expensive in gas, that sort of thing. But I think this is going to be something that might have some impact when it comes to DeFi products and how they're built. Being able to write a bug fix on the go, being able to sort out problems that you see or make upgrades to functionality. But again, that opens up the whole idea is if you can upgrade, finality is a question mark. If you can upgrade, can you introduce more bugs? And the answer is always yes. So I think what they're doing is smart and what they're doing is great. But I think people need to consider the both positive and negative benefits and consequences of using something like this to implement upgradable contracts. So those are just my off-the-cuff thoughts on that one, and thanks for bringing this to my attention because I hadn't seen it before. On Malguar, enjoyed your episode as always. Thanks so much for watching. I wanted to know your thoughts on Polkadot, which seem to be quite popular these days. Projects like Kusama and Akala in the Polkadot ecosystem are getting traction. What are your views on this subject? This is, again, a fantastic question, because Polkadot is one of the most hyped projects right now. It's one of those things where it's so hyped, in fact, that there are even centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges that are taking advantage of this new token distribution, which is happening soon. And they're, pushing this out, and it's, kind of pissing off the Polkadot team. But more on that in another episode. I'm doing some research on this whole process. But to me, Polkadot presents an interesting quandary because you have a lot of other projects that are working on interoperability. You even have the Kusama network, which is like the canary version or the early version of Polkadot, pretty much the same sort of structure, the same architecture, but deployed first because that was the whole thing. It was an experiment. And Polkadot, it's taken some time to build because it's a very ambitious project. But you have projects like Cosmos that have been working on the same problem. You have Icon. You have a whole bunch of interoperability protocols, which we're going to talk about more later today. But Polkadot really does have this interesting concept where at the architecture level of the actual blockchains that interoperate with each other, there is sort of this common shared layer, this substrate blockchain architectural framework that I think is pretty powerful and pretty smart because it's going to allow projects like Akala, for example, to not have to worry about the protocol level as much. They can just focus on what makes their protocol and their project unique and to build out the feature sets that will make people want to use it. And so it lowers that barrier to entry for new projects, less so for existing ones to migrate. So I think that'll be very interesting to see how that happens. Is Polkadot going to be composed mostly of brand new blockchains or brand new protocol sort of projects rather than other ones who want to migrate to take advantage of Polkadot's interoperability layer? That will be something interesting to watch. But overall, I am a fan. I am going to be following Polkadot very closely over the next probably 6 to 8 months because I think there's going to be a lot of movement there. And Kusama, something I've gotten to play with a little bit, and I'm very excited. And I also wrote an article about Akala and some of the other DeFi products being built on Polkadot, which you can find in Wealth Mastery Crypto, Lark's Wealth Mastery newsletter. It's about crypto and basically all things crypto. So I'll link that down below if you're interested. Thank you very much for your question. And then we have a question from donb.bitcoin. Yo, Hashoshi, when will you be launching the hash staking pool on Cardano? Great question. The constraint for me is not interest. It's just time. It takes me time to figure all this stuff out because I'm honestly not as savvy with this whole stake pools nonsense or stake pool business as someone like Rick McCracken is from the Cardano Effect or Kaizen Crypto. I am very much a noob when it comes to setting up a stake pool. So I will be looking to them for advice, but I'm very excited to do it. I definitely want to, and I will be setting that up hopefully here before the end of the year is out. And I'll be one of those smaller pools that is like an underdog, I guess. But the big guys out there, big shout out to them for doing this. And shout out to all the folks that are running stake pools. It's really exciting to see this all operating in mainnet for Cardano. Big shout out to you guys. So that's going to do it for the questions today. We've got a ton of news to talk about. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, first on the list today is Algorand, who just announced a new set of smart contract-focused features that will inevitably open the door to DeFi applications on the Algorand network as early as this month in 2020. The crux of these upgrades are core layer 1 smart contracts that are stateful, meaning they persist the state or value of a given set of variables and parameters on the network. Now, this is something that we've seen in Ethereum, for example, where the state is stored within a contract scope, and it can be a variable number of things or a variety of things like mapping addresses to token balances at any given time, for example. Now, Algorand is taking a unique approach to this problem, though, because the truth is blockchain storage space is at a premium, and using it costs developers and users resources, and that's part of the reason we see contracts so expensive to operate now in Ethereum. So Algorand is utilizing a sort of hybrid approach, wherein as much data as possible is stored at the user account level, keeping the minimum possible amount of information within the scope of the code itself, which reduces the burden on the network. Now, the core takeaway here is that the base smart contracts built in an assembly-like language, and meaning it's a very low-level language. It's fast, it's really native to the computer itself, and it executes at the foundational layer of the Algorand network, like consensus does. And as such, these transactions and executions are lightning fast and cheap. So this could very well open the door to a wide variety of stateful DeFi applications to now take advantage of Algorand's digital asset standard to build out their platforms. As Ethereum remains congested and pricey, this could be an opportunity for Algorand. Now, there is one even more powerful feature that we could talk about here, but that's a story for another day. It's going to take a while to talk about. So hint, hint, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell notification so you don't miss that standalone Algorand video. Now, in the world of Cardano, there was an announcement made this week that I think fixes one of the larger issues that I've had with the Shelley upgrade, and that's been the requirement for a user to delegate their entire wallet's worth of stake to only one stake pool. And this makes the decentralization aspect of staking and delegation a bit less free-flowing and usable, because to distribute your delegation across multiple pools, a user has to manually kind of create multiple wallets or multiple accounts within their wallet application to direct them towards different pools. This is inconvenient. It's a bad user experience, and it's encouraged many people to simply just direct all of their ADA to one pool. However, this issue was quickly acknowledged and is now being fixed. So in the dataless wallet, the core full node wallet developed by the IOHK and Cardano team is being updated to give users an elegant way to, from one wallet, delegate to a variety of stake pools with relative ease. So as described in a blog post, from the dataless wallet, users will be able to assign percentages for delegation of their ADA to a variety of different stake pools from the user interface. This will make it really easy to distribute one's delegation across multiple pools. Furthermore, users can then share their configuration in terms of distribution with other delegators, which will undoubtedly help propagate lesser known pools and help prevent oversaturation of just a few big pools on the network. With this issue being solved, my biggest concern, honestly, with the user experience side of the Shelley updates is being resolved. So I'm quite stoked on that one, and a big shout out to the IOHK team for knocking that out pretty quick. Now, if you've watched my channel before, you probably know that I'm a big fan of the Brave browser, the privacy-focused web browser that, in my opinion, makes Google Chrome obsolete. I haven't used it in like 3 years now. Now, if you've not tried it yet, by the way, please do give it a download using the link down in the description below and check it out. Let me know what you think. But within the Brave browser, users can opt in to anonymously matched ads in order to earn the native BAT cryptocurrency. But in this space, the move towards decentralization is really not optional, and criticism has been laying towards the pseudo-centralized structure of the current ad structure within Brave. So that said, Brave has been working on or designing mechanisms by which to decentralize the entire ecosystem from end to end. And they've finally now released some preliminary research that fleshes out more about the architecture behind that decentralized version. So this work is being dubbed Themis. Brave has outlined this architectural design for a decentralized advertising ecosystem whereby advertisers publishing ads and users viewing ads can be adequately incentivized without exposing private information to each other. In this ecosystem, users who interact with ads can do so anonymously, and data related to those interactions can be processed and distributed using encryption. On the flip side, valid ad interactions can be also rewarded directly in a native cryptocurrency, providing users incentive to interact with ads. Now, in this first version, however, there is still a centralized entity that is technically necessary to facilitate this process with adequate counterparty trust, and that is a campaign facilitator, which would orchestrate the payment and calculation of ad interactions and prices therein. In future iterations of Themis, though, Brave researchers aim to eliminate this centralized counterparty and remove barriers to far more progressive decentralization efforts. So I'm really happy to see Brave trying to actively develop their ecosystem like this and to track towards progressively making their decentralized operation more decentralized to the greatest possible extent that they can. Which brings me to today's 404 Logic Not Found. And for those of you who are as of yet uninitiated in this little firecracker of a segment, I highlight notable tech-related fails or otherwise stupid moves that just really need to get some attention. And speaking of attention, if you want to get this video some attention from the YouTube algorithm gods, please do hit that like button and get subscribed, because it tells the YouTube robots that you're enjoying the content and you want to keep watching. So thank you for that in advance. And this is a really tiring thing to do, to talk to a camera like a psycho for like 45 minutes. Anyways, moving on, this is more of a general stupid thing that I think needs to get talked about as this bull run, if we can call it that, starts to spin up. Now, in 2017, when the crypto world was ablaze with cash and hype, the buzzword decentralization was at the crux of virtually every nicely formatted white paper and drew in millions of dollars in investments from ICOs. It was posed as if a platform was not 100% decentralized, it was a failure, right? And it was a buzzword that drew in so much investment, drew in so much attention, and it became this idea that decentralization itself is a use case. And in reality, the word decentralization is not a binary measure. It's a spectrum, and it's not a use case in and of itself. Now, this could be debated, but I'm of the belief that 100% decentralization cannot be achieved. It simply doesn't comply with human nature. There's always inequity, despite good-natured protocol design. Some will always be richer and more influential. Some will be more natural leaders and draw delegation more easily than others, etc. There are also times where a valuable ecosystem is built with clear compromises in terms of how decentralized it is for a reason. And there are times where a protocol in theory is decentralized to the greatest degree possible, but then when it's used in the real world doesn't manifest that way. Look at delegated proof of stake. My point here is that the toxicity of the narrative around decentralization became a boon in 2017. One cannot adequately evaluate an investment in something based off of that alone, in my opinion. Yes, every project in the space should track towards the greatest degree of decentralization as possible, but know as an investor that this will never be enough to claim 100% decentralization. There are yet still those who lash out, complain, scream scam, 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 and try to imply that decentralization is in fact binary, either you are or you aren't, and that is a fallacy in my humble opinion. Centralization can happen organically or by design, but nothing is black and white. So 404, Logic Not Found. In related news, though, there is yet another scam that's picking up steam, and I want everyone to be aware of it. UniSwap, the popular decentralized exchange service that allows users to swap one token for another directly from a smart contract, is now being used to siphon money from unsuspecting investors. The main crux of this scam is to create fake ERC20 tokens for protocols that have some sort of hype and list them with UniSwap, hoping investors will buy some, not realizing that they are actually fake, unsanctioned ERC20s. This has already happened with several notable projects like Aukey network we talked about before, and Near being impersonated on the Uniswap exchange with phony ERC20 contracts. Now this presents a real challenge for decentralized exchanges, which in reality, by design, don't enforce rules on who can and can't list on the service. Now this lack of governance opens the door to scammers who create these clone ERC20 token contracts and register with Uniswap under a moniker to scam people who think they're buying something legit. Now, that being said, one way to ensure you're protected is to always go to the official website for the project you're looking to buy before you pick some up on Uniswap to make sure that the officially sanctioned ERC20 contract address matches the one that you're about to interact with. Now, It's this kind of thing that harkens back to the 404 logic not found topic, that decentralization is a spectrum. UniSwap is amazing. It's arguably one of the most powerful and significant changes in the exchange space that we've seen in a long time. And it's pressuring centralized custody exchanges in a big way, and that's great. However, there is this need for some sort of governance here, whether by reputation system for token listing, user interface driven layers that warn users of unsanctioned listings, or even a governance committee that can serve the function of preventing scams like this to operate completely unabated. So yes, would that introduce some layer of centralization? Probably so, but there are a variety of ways to do this with varying levels of centralization that are necessary. Everything is a trade-off. Building a product is always a trade-off equation, and again, nothing can be 100% decentralized, and the more decentralized you are, you're making trade-offs in other places. Now, in terms of Bitcoin this week, there was some fun price action with a bit of volatility early on in the week, but that said, we're still well above 10K, well into the 11,000s, and we have been for most of the week as well. But what's most striking to me is that the correlation between Bitcoin and gold is even more prevalent than I even thought last week when we talked about it. When gold dropped this week, Bitcoin followed, and vice versa. So it's pretty wild to see, and I'll be watching this pretty closely from now on to see if they start moving in sync again. Now, I did read some serious Bitcoin hopium this week on Twitter thread started by Charts BTC, and they analyzed statistics related to Bitcoin. So when analyzing the previous peaks post-halving for Bitcoin in years past, Charts BTC found that there was a 36 times growth between the first halving and then post-2012 peak, and then 17 times growth between the post-2012 peak and the post-2016 peak, which means that if this current cycle follows the last trend, we could see another multiplier on price during this post-2020 halving cycle. So if you apply those same multipliers from previous cycles, you could get numbers from 300,000 to 720,000 for Bitcoin's price using those same numbers. And those are fantasy world things, okay? I don't think it's possible. I do think it's possible, though, that we see a multiplier of today's price, just not by 17 or 36 times. Maybe it's less insane to say that we get half that, maybe 5 to 8 times in this cycle, but even that from my gut just feels like I'm wishing, like there's no way that that can happen. The reality is anything can happen, but it's wild and who knows. But that being said, I did read a story about an Ontario-based restaurant franchise in Canada announcing that they've moved all their cash reserves over to Bitcoin in an attempt to insulate from economic crisis and solidify their future reserve value. The restaurant, Tahini's, substantiated this move by saying that Bitcoin offers a much better alternative to saving cash. And after the news about MicroStrategy doing this exact same thing, this is just great news. I mean, Bitcoin, in my mind, is starting to come into its own. We're starting to see that more people, the masses, are starting to understand the value prop. So what do you think about this? Let me know in the comments below. Now, in terms of Bitcoin interoperability, things are finally coming to fruition, with Near completing its rainbow bridge between its own network and Ethereum, Icon starting to put the finishing touches on its own framework, Ontology and Neo are finalizing their protocol for cross-chain comms, Cosmos is delivering on its grandiose vision of massive scale interoperability, and Polkadot is starting to deliver on its ambitious substrate-based blockchain interoperability scheme. I think that besides DeFi, the biggest story of growth in crypto is interoperability, and 2021 is going to be in many ways a decisive year for this breed of projects. So I would keep your eyes on the space, be watching all these interoperability projects, because it's going to be a battle like pretty much none other. Now, another note on exchanges, actually, the Reserve Rights Project just announced that it will be using its clever 4-week withdrawal reserve contract to allocate funds to listing the native RSR token on exchanges. Now, one of the critical missions for something like this, for a collateralized reserve token ecosystem like Reserve Rights, is to get liquidity for RSR and RSV tokens. That said, while I do think it's smart for centralized exchanges to be on board and they're a critical component of liquidity availability, I do think Reserve Rights should also take full advantage wherever possible to do the decentralized exchange options that can bring a lot of liquidity without paying all the fees. At the very least, these decentralized exchanges provide some leverage so you can cut down on some of these crazy fees that some exchanges request for listing. So overall, I'll be watching this closely as reserve rights has been a subject to my research lately, but I definitely do admire their structure of transparency in terms of what they're allocating funds to. Now, like I mentioned in the August's first Crypto Over Coffee, I'm doing bi-monthly tech spotlights to show off one unique tech product that I get sent throughout the year. And so that said, these are not sponsored in the sense that I don't get paid and I don't get told what to say, and I choose the products that I show or don't show. But of course, I do get the product for free, and so take that for what it is. But this week, I'm talking about a product that I was actually majorly stoked to see show up at my door, and that is the Aukey high capacity, high output battery pack. So this thing has 26,800 milliamp hours of battery power at 60 watts, and it has enough power to power my MacBook Pro when I'm on the go and away from a charger, which is particularly useful when I go to work in the park just to get out of the house for a bit. So this beast of a charger can also charge like my iPhone 10, for example, up to 10 times on a single charge, which is pretty insane and pretty darn useful. So I just carry this thing in my backpack, and I can probably show you like a close-up picture or video of this. And once a week, I charge it with the USB charger, and it's one of the best accessories that I've ever used or had for my MacBook, to be honest. It's a lifesaver because there's so many times where I forget to charge it, and then I'm out and I don't have my charger, and I need something to save me so I can work. So if you're interested in picking one of these up, I will leave you a link down below for you to check it out. Of course, leave me your feedback down below. And that is the nice and concise tech spotlight for this 2-week series. Now, as always, if you have some time to stick around, I just released an updated 2020 review of my absolute favorite VPN, which I actually just renewed for myself for another 2 years. So if you're interested, I'll link that up for you here on the screen. But regardless, I want to thank you so much for your time, support, and attention. And I wish you and your family a wonderful weekend and week to come. And until next time, cheers.